Hi everyone, welcome to today's live session with Global Insurance Media, and I'm here to talk to you today about education goals during quarantine. We're just going to wait a minute to give people time. We still have 3 minutes for them to join this conversation. And while we're waiting, I just thought I would talk to you about myself and what we've already done over the last 3 sessions. So, like I said, my name is Megha Mawandia, and I'm a parent coach and a counselor. So, the focus of work that I do is to support adults, parents, so that they are able to support their children better. Because what we see is what comes in the way of children reaching their potential is not anything to do with the children, but everything to do with us and our state of mind and how we're feeling. So I'd love to welcome any questions that you have. I'd love to hear you all say, um, um, okay, I would love for you all to say hello, where you're from. Uh, While you'll settle in, get yourself a cup of coffee. This is a longish conversation and it's an important conversation. Yeah, okay. So, to get us started, we need to understand when we're talking about children's education and we're talking about this quarantine, these corona times, whatever we had planned for the months of March, April, May is really tossed out of the window. Board exams have been cancelled. Classes that you paid for have moved online or cancelled. School as you knew it has changed. In fact, schools have been sending mails out to the parents, informing them about their anticipatory changes for the next year. So there is this understanding that education as we knew it is not what it is going to look like post this time for a while to come. Now, in that scenario, how do I plan for this education? How do I make sure that this time doesn't end up becoming that black hole in my child's journey of learning and maximize this time for learning? So, I'd like you to firstly separate these two ideas of learning and education. Hi, Jagbeer, good evening. So, I'd like to separate these two ideas of learning and education. Education typically is the formalized method. It is what you use, it is what schools are doing. It is about getting into the next, it's really about getting into the next educational institute. So, starting off from preschool, and your plan is to get into big school, your plan is to get into college, and college, your plan is to get into post graduation, your plan is to get into a job. It's not necessarily the same thing as learning. Because when you're going for a job interview, you can definitely list down these formalized education structures. You cannot talk about the learning you have done. Not exactly, you cannot talk about the learning you have done outside formal structures. So both have a role to play, both are important, but we need to separate the two to be able to set the right goals for each of them. So let me first pick up on formalized education because, to be honest, that's the easy one. So that's the one that's being managed by your schools and colleges, wherever they may be. So there are a basic set of requirements that they have probably listed out for you and for your children to be doing. And you are asked to support them and do as much as you can. Sometimes the as much as you can does not match what the school is asking you to do. And that's where we're going to start looking at the deviations and where the choices are coming in. The second stream that I'm talking about, which is learning. I want to break that up based on the age of your children because it's going to look very different for each age group. Before I address that, the very important thing to understand is in these quarantine times, you are more important than your child. Dramatic, right? There's a reason why you are much more important than your child is. Because your mental health is at the center of your child being able to function the way they need to function. Your child's security comes from the security you're able to provide. You're able to only provide security when you're feeling secure. So, at the onset of any other discussion about children, we need to ensure that you're feeling safe, secure, and capable of handling whatever it is that you're setting yourself up to handle. If you're not, the focus needs to be to first get there. So if your work is feeling overwhelming, talk to your boss, talk to your colleagues, see how you can reduce your load, or go back to your drawing board and see how you can organize your time to be able to handle that load. Talk to the various members in your family to help out with various tasks that come in the way of being able to do the workload that is expected out of you, or to be able to help out with your children. For example, my husband isn't working right now because his work is manufacturing, which is shut. So while I have work going on and I'm on these calls, he has taken over the load with the children. So we do need to have these negotiations, we do need to have these discussions, and we need to understand that you are not an octopus, you do not have 8 limbs, and you're not going to be able to do it all alone. So keeping that as a backdrop, let's dive into what does learning look like in the quarantine times. So the first age group is infancy, 0 to 2. And there's really nothing, there's absolutely nothing that you could do which needs to be done to stimulate learning. The brain is growing at an unprecedented rate at that age. And anything and everything that comes around them is a matter of curiosity, it is an opportunity of learning. So let them run amok in the house, be free, and focus on play and not about learning. So, this is not the time to learn how to sort. This is not the time to learn colors or wheels of the bus. This is really the time to enjoy. And if Wheels of the Bus is fun, please go ahead and sing that song on repeat. The next stage that we're looking at is 2 to 6. This is a very important age, and this is an age where I'm getting a lot of calls and inquiries for. Because this is where parents are preparing for big school. This is where parents are becoming more and more anxious because children need to be ready for formal education, as we discussed earlier. Now, in this readiness, what we're doing is we're really becoming marketing scapegoats to anyone who is selling a Zoom class or an online class and signing our children up for it. This is also the time where we do not have the scaffold of a formal education. So we don't have a school that's saying, you know what, I've got you covered and I'm taking care of it. In education circles, we have gone blue in the face saying that children do not need formal education till the age of 6. So for us, these quarantine times is perfect for children because they're not getting pitted with other children of the same age group. The expectations out of them are not unreasonable, and they're not being thrust into this arena of formal education at this age, even if it's a temporary blip. We think there's a lot that they can do with it, and there's a lot for them to thrive on. So, what do we do if we don't go in for these Zoom calls, etc.? I had a parent who was talking to me earlier this week with a 2 year old, and they were trying to do a Zoom class for dance. And the 2 year old decided, no, it was a storytelling class, sorry. And the 2 year old decided, this isn't for me, and walked right out of that screen. What that did to the mother is create a lot of anxiety for her. She got worked up, she got angry at her child because she had paid money and she wanted her child to come and participate in that class. The thing is, your child is not understanding what is going on across the screen. The age of 2 to 6 is of exploration and learning from doing and watching. It is not from looking at a screen and copying what is going on there. Yes, they do know all the songs of the nursery rhymes that they see on television, but there's a lot of sensory overload that is going on over there, and that is not learning as we look at it. So if you look at a early childhood educator, the goals in that age group of 2 to 6 are really about motor skill development. They are about developing thinking, doing skills like sorting, grouping, etc. So, what if I were to tell you that you can get your children to do household chores and involve them in the work in the house while learning each of these skills? How? Very simple. Involve them in cooking. Make them make those rotis every day. Not for everybody, but maybe their own roti. What you will actually see is a reduction in fussy eating and an enthusiasm because they're being purposeful. End of the day, we're all looking for purpose in ourselves. And it is the purpose that is the real motivator for us to be able to do various things. So involve them in cooking, and I'm saying this from the age of 2. I'm not saying this later. Even 2-year-olds very well know how to. They love the act of doing pat, 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 making a peda out of the atta and trying to make a roti out of it. Don't take them onto the gas, but make them do this and then cook it and serve it to them. Make them wash the vegetables, sort the vegetables. So we're doing weekly grocery runs, and when everything comes back, we're washing everything, we're spreading it out on the kitchen floor before we start sorting everything and putting it into the required cupboard. Involve your child in that weekly activity. They are learning colors, they're learning names of vegetables, they're learning what goes in the fridge, what goes in the storeroom, what goes in the cupboard. They're automatically learning so many of these sorting skills that they would have done in an artificial environment in school. Get them to wash the vegetables, get them to wash utensils after you have eaten food, even their own plate if that's possible. You're developing fine motor skills, balance, and they're enjoying themselves. Another thing that you could get them to do around the house is cleaning. So, one parent, after a consultation, decided that's it, my son is going to be dusting his room from today onwards. And that's great because not only is it going to work on their skills, again, there's opportunities of sorting in the room. So, you find crayons around, put them in the crayon bowl, you find blocks around, put them in the blocks, and so on and so forth, making beds, doing jharu katka, everything that you needed your maid to do, get your child to jump in and do it too. The one thing that we can use this time to do is toilet training, but only after the age of 2.5. Today's topic is not about that, but it is definitely an important learning skill. The other learning skill, which can be started at age 2, actually should have been started before, but should be thrust into at age 2, is of eating independently. Get your children to start 50% of their meal, but increasingly eat independently. That's what schools do. If you notice at play schools, eating is an important skill that they're trying to get their children to master in the school. How do we do it in the house? We create the right atmosphere, we join them on the table, we hold the limit, we engage them in conversation, no longer toys, and we let the food be the engaging piece of that mealtime. So, to recap, in the age of 2 to 6, I'm asking you to focus on chores, doing things like cleaning, independent eating. Do not fall into the trap of distant learning polls and worksheets and plans as such. It's really okay if your child does not pick up a crayon. The idea behind the crayon is not for them to learn how to color, it is a fine motor skill development, which they can learn through all of these other tasks that I'm talking about. Of course, if they're fond of coloring, please go ahead and color. And lastly, something that you can do at home, read to them. I'm not asking you to spend every waking moment reading with them, but as much time as you can muster to read to them. Reading is a good skill because it's not about literacy. So it's not about them learning to read. It's about the voice modulation, the time you're spending with them, just the close contact and the connection that comes their way, and the opening up of stories, the world of stories and imagination that comes with it. So don't worry about them being able to read or them learning how to say ABC. Just read to them. I promise you, there is not a child who has been read to who doesn't eventually learn how to read. Yeah, and schools are going to do a good job of catching up whenever they are permitted. So do not worry, you're not the only one in that boat. Before I move on to the age group of 6 to 14, I just wanted to check in if any of you who are watching this have any questions for this right now. I'll address it now, or even if you post your questions later, I'm happy to address it later. Formal education till this age has not come in. Some of you have your children enrolled in preschools, etc., where there are certain classes happening. My suggestion is use those classes more for a socializing round for you to meet the other parents because most of them are happening as mother toddler, parent toddler sessions. Use it as a space to talk to educators about challenges you might be facing, but do not allow the anxiety of not being able to keep up with the expectations get to you. It is not the important skill to be focusing on right now. So if your child doesn't want to do Zumba, it's okay. If your child doesn't want to color the apple, it's okay. Teach them how to cut that apple, teach them how to eat that apple on their own. That is much, much more important. And teach them how to sort that apple. Okay. So I'm going to talk now about the age group of 6 to 14. And I'm using these age groups loosely. I've really bracketed them based on education, formal education structures, and what we're looking at in terms of goals for development at each of these age groups. So 6 to 14 is something I have picked as a primary school and middle school period in which you're going to see varying degrees of independence when it comes to education. So typically 6 to 8 to 9 year olds are not necessarily getting onto Zoom calls or various forms of online calls. They are being given task sheets and parents are expected to do those and submit them for the children. And when we're looking at 8, 9, 10-year-old onward children, we're seeing different schools, of course, have different ways of dealing with it, but we're seeing the entering of distant education calls and videos in which the children are expected to be in front of a screen and take certain ownership of their educational goals. Now, here's the controversial controversy that I'm going to talk about. What if I were to tell you that you do not have to do everything that has been asked of you? If you remember, and if you've tuned in late, I'm going to repeat myself. I have said that you need to first take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself means that if you do not have the time or the mental bandwidth to be able to fulfill those education goals, they can take a back seat because your sanity is much more important. We do not need you to be waking up at 4 in the morning to spend 2 hours to try to organize your thoughts around your child's education system or create some fancy apparatus to be able to teach your child about things while carrying out a full working day and a house task day. It is not possible, it is not reasonable, it is not sustainable. And the reality is, we do not know how long this quarantine will last. So, everything that we do, we need to do it in a way which feels sustainable, at least for the near future. So, if I'm going to tell you that you don't have to do everything that school is asking you to do, what is it that you do? There are two things that I'm asking you to look at. Number one, what is easy for you? So, for example, teaching maths, I love. It's easy for me. I like to do that. So, do that with your child. Look at your level of interest. Why? Because you're not going to feel overwhelmed that you need to now learn how to teach your child how to do this. You're not going to feel flustered every time your child asks you a question because you probably enjoy doing it because you have a certain amount of knowledge when it comes down to it. So try to pick topics which are easy for you to do. Again, ask for help. Look at other members of the family and see if they can pick up one topic at a time as needed to take over those tasks as required out of you. I just want to take a second to welcome Vishal, Bhavna, Anil, Prathma. Hi, nice to have you all on this call today. So, where as we were talking about the education goals in the age of 6 to 14, the first controversial point I'm asking you to do is not do everything and maybe pick the subjects that come naturally to you that feel easy for you to do. The second thing that I'm asking you to look at is where is it that your child has been struggling in their school year? There have been, and as parents, you would know things that have been going on in school, and they've been going along at a pace which wasn't comfortable for you or your child, and they have been trying to catch up with that pace. This is a perfect opportunity to slow that pace and focus on that pace. So for example, for one of my daughters, it's creative writing. And I'm using this time to really brush up on her ability to comprehension, to creative writing, and really we're working on English. While with my other daughter, it is maths. And we're using this time to work on her math skill. And it's okay to let those subjects which feel easy, which feel doable, which you feel confident that they're going to be able to catch up to later, it's okay to let it slide. Net net, what I'm asking you to do is to reduce that burden of work that is on your plate because you did not sign up for homeschooling. And this is not homeschooling, this is distant learning. And in distance learning, you've got to pick what you can and talk to your teachers. Tell them this is feeling difficult. Could they give you an easier version of it that seems manageable to you? Is there any tips or tricks that they can share with you? But most importantly, do not let the pressure overwhelm you and become more than you can manage. Because again, and I cannot reiterate it enough, your mental health trumps every school submission. Your school is not going to have your child, at least I hope not, and do not quote me on it. But as far as my conversation with various educational schools, schools are not going to be penalizing your children or holding them back because parents did not have the mental bandwidth to be able to keep up with learning. We are very, very, very concerned about the mental health of everybody post quarantine. So instead of putting too much focus on biology and physics and algebra, let's put all our focus on that mental health while at the same time reducing screen time. So here's my second point of controversy. Well, it's not very controversial, but it is an important point to talk about regardless. So screen time has gone up amongst everybody right now. Children are doing classes on screens. We are teaching is happening on screens. They have to watch videos on screens. So there's a lot of screens that is coming our way. And till a month ago, we were talking about reduce screen time, reduce screen time, reduce screen time, and now it is up. We need to understand that while the screen time is up, there is a context to it. There is a context of this screen is now becoming a medium for them to connect with their friends, for them to connect with their teachers, for them to be able to do all sorts of things. So I want you to look at screen time in different streams. There is a screen time which is a one-on-one connect or a multi-people to one connect, which means you are not just watching something, you are interacting with the people on that screen. And there is a learning or a socialization aspect to it. Let's not include that in any screen time limit that you set. So, for example, if you're using Skype or WhatsApp video to connect with family members around the world, um, that does not come under my child is using too much screen. If you're using screen time to get your children to do their schooling, that does not count as screen time. So let's start reducing the amount of screen time which isn't falling into these two brackets. And this is where I'm talking more in this age group of, uh, 14 plus, but really we can look at the age groups of 10 and above, where there is an increased consumption of cartoons, TV shows, uh, YouTube videos, um, Fortnite, video games, etc. While this is convenient for some of us who are working, and while we're in the middle of tasks, they're watching what they're watching. Can we try to carve out times in the evenings and the mornings which are screen free for the household? Can we look at those times as ways to connect physically, playing board games, doing chores together, but getting out of this virtual reality? I'd like to share a story with you about this to drive home how disorienting this virtual world can be. When I got started onto my educational journey of being a parent coach and a counselor, a lot of the work I was doing was on my computer. So I was connecting with my educators and colleagues all via the screen. And I'd spend hours talking to them, learning from them, and poring over material that had come my way. About 2 years into this educational journey, I had the opportunity to be able to meet a lot of them face to face. And the first time I touched even one of them, and I just mean held hands or gave them a hug, I felt this, I started to cry, and I felt this overwhelming sense of these were people who I thought existed only in my screen and were figments of my imagination or the internet, and they had actually become real now. And this understanding that these people had become real was overwhelming for me. And this is me, an adult who who made who this was a choice. We're looking at children whose new modality to connect with people is now this screen. We're going to see difficulties when they come face to face with these people later in their ability to rekindle that same level of connection that they had while during quarantine or before quarantine with these people on the screen. So we need them to not lose touch of this personal connect. So as families, we need to make sure we're creating enough screen free time in the house. It doesn't have to be in the day. It can be at the convenience that you have. So whatever your work allows, whether it's in the morning, whether it's in the afternoon, whether it's in the evening, but time when we get down and physically do things with the members who are available. So no social distancing within the house is very important to protect them from the overwhelming feelings of these screen creatures becoming real again. And now, how do I say hello to them? Because I'm used to using an emoji to be able to communicate my feelings. Yeah. So at 14 plus, we're looking at an importance of reducing screen time. So insist with your children to spend that time with you without screens. Go back to traditional things that were done when you were growing up and when you were 14 and didn't have those screens as distractions. We need to create enough alternates in our house. And we need to give our teenage children a lot of room to be able to act out. I'm getting increasing SOS calls of parents of teenagers where children are becoming defiant, they're angry, they're challenging, they're rude, they're sulky, they've disappeared. The adjectives go on and on and on, and one is not prettier than the next. They are struggling too. This is the time when they are used to creating a separate identity from you and the family. This is what their psychology is asking them to do. Now, trapped in the house, they are feeling this sense of trappedness and this inability to create that identity. What is available to them is social media and doesn't seem safe for us or for them either. And they know it, it's not the same thing as meeting people. So we need to give them a lot of room to be able to act out. They don't want to, they can't help it. So allow them that space to be rude and angry, but yet hold that limit to where your tolerance level lies. And try to be a little more open to your own tolerance level, wherever it may be. Please note, this tolerance does not equate permissiveness. It does not mean that you do not have limits with your children. It does not mean you do not monitor their social media content. Those things are important because they are about safety, while the tolerance is about giving them a space to vent. Try to provide them options. So, a lot of parents are saying, I keep telling my child to exercise with me, to work out with me, to sign up for this class, etc., etc. They're not interested. So instead of signing them up for something, how about you play with them? Knock a ball with them, play a game with them, do something physical with them. Challenge each other to do the maximum number of burpees or a plank or whatever it is that you can manage within your space. But create dance videos. Oh, that's something that's a great workout and very challenging and oh so fun, because I know for one I'm really bad at it, and that is trying to do TikTok video dances. And your 14-year-olds are going to love you for it, because that's what they're trying to master with their friends. This is something they are better at, and it allows them to shine in their identity. So the learning goals with 14 plus is really to give them the space to regulate their feelings, to hold limits in ways that seem comfortable for them and for you. Yet there need to be certain limits. And at this point, not to make it about let's fill in that college application, let's make sure you have social service, let's make sure you have this. Let's not make it about these big agendas. Before I end this call, I want to talk to you all a little bit about brain science in that age group and us as adults, so that we understand why creativity is not shining right now. And this is very rudimentary brain science knowledge, but I'm going to simplify it, where it is our brain, think about it, has 5 layers to it. The topmost layer, or the easiest to access layer, is about safety, security. The next layer goes a little deeper, and it moves from safety and security into um, communication, into connection. And as we go deeper, the fifth layer is where creativity lies. The reality is, because of this quarantine, we are threatened. As we feel threatened, our ability to go from layer 1 to 5 reduces. The amount of time we're able to spend in layer 5 reduces, and our access to it reduces as well. So, what we are seeing is most of us are operating in 1, 2, and 3. Of course, there are a few who are not feeling the impact of the quarantine, who are cocooned in, for whatever reason, they are cocooned into their world where they are able to access 5. I'm not talking about them because they are happy in their 5, and you can see it in them, and they're probably not tuning in for this video. But for most of us who are here, who are searching for answers, we are oscillating between 1, 2, and 3. This is about survival. This is about getting things done. This is not about creativity, planning, big picture thinking. We need to understand that. We need to focus on our 1, 2, and 3. This is not when you come up with those grand ideas for college applications. This is not when you come up with that one thing that you've always wanted to do and are going to do now. I have always wanted to study Hamlet. It's taken me 3 weeks, and today I opened Act 1. It is hard to do because our brain is not able to go down to that creative function right now. Or if it is, it takes a lot of energy for it to be able to go there. And that is what is going on with your 14 above year old child's brain. Every time we're pushing them to make this time count, their brain is pushing back and saying, surviving is counting. I want you to think back, and we need to stop using these examples, which is why I'm talking about this. Every time there has been a world war, a pandemic in the past, so the Spanish flu, they say, was a bigger pandemic than COVID 19. You had the world wars, you've had regional wars, you've had situations where people have felt threatened like this. And every time that that has happened, there has been a group of people who have gone out and fight, but there has been a group of people who have struggled for survival. The reality is, in those times, these stories have not taken each other's, they've not fought for whose story is more important. Right now, because of social media, we constantly get this counter that you're just sitting on the couch. This shouldn't be difficult for you. Look at that nurse who's going out to work. Look at that doctor who's doing this. Look at that laborer who's migrant laborer who's walking all those kilometers. Life is hard for everybody. We are not built to sit on that couch. I am not taking away the need for empathy for people who have to go out in the front lines and work hard. But I'm asking you to give empathy to yourself and your family that what you are doing is also challenging. Not being able to get out of your house is hard. Not being able to reach your loved ones is hard. Worrying about the health and safety of people who are not with you and who are with you is hard. Worrying what to make to keep the family happy is hard. Surviving, working, teaching your child, running the house is hard. And for your children, not meeting their friends is really hard. So let's not constantly look at other stories and talk about how difficult they have it. Again, it's important to have empathy for them, but let's please have empathy for ourselves. So, to close off today's session, in terms of education goals, I'm asking you to split your targets into education and learning. Let school follow its education policies. Do what you can. Focus on your mental health. If you can't, do not be ashamed to say, this is my limit and that's all I can do. You will have enough time to take care of it later. When you're not feeling threatened, when you're able to access layer number 5 of your brain. And in terms of learning, look at chores around the house, look at independence, look at cooking, look at surviving as the learning skill. And as we have discussed, you can go back into that video. We have talked about age groups from 0 to young adults, how learning skills look different, and they can be achieved with really not one crayon picked up if it's not of interest to you. So thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's session. And I look forward to seeing you next week with more on tips on how to keep your sanity and your family's health in these corona times. Take care. This is Megha Mawandia from a corona cave in Mumbai. Bye bye.